Welcome to Real Bear Reviews, your paradise for movie lovers. Thank you for supporting our channel. Your love keeps us alive and growing.
This American man was tricked into coming to Thailand for a high-paying job, but as soon as he got off the plane, a horrifying scene unfolded. He saw that the roadside shops were all closed in panic. Hundreds of thugs armed with weapons were advancing toward him. He looked behind and saw a large group of riot police also appear on the other side of the road, and he was caught in the middle. Just as the man didn't know what to do, the thugs attacked first, then immediately tried to throw a Molotov cocktail. The police shot him dead on the spot. In the chaos, the man quickly hid behind the riot police, but these desperate thugs, simply by throwing rocks and using the sticks they had in their hands, quickly overwhelmed the riot police unit. One might ask, were these riot police truly not intentionally letting the thugs go? Seeing that the situation was bad, the man decided to risk his life and run towards the hotel, but along the way, thugs would occasionally appear. Whenever they saw a foreigner, they would capture them. The man struggled to reach the hotel, but the hotel entrance was blocked by thugs. In the crowd, there was a man who was captured. He yelled that he was American. This man thought that just by saying he was American, the thugs would spare him. Little did he know, the thugs actually wanted to kill Americans. At this moment, the man was stunned. Since when were Americans no longer safe in Southeast Asia? Seeing that the thugs hadn't noticed him, the man quickly ran away, but was immediately spotted by a thug. In this critical moment, the man quickly pulled down the fire escape ladder and climbed to the upper floor of the hotel. The thugs followed closely behind. Fortunately, the man used all his strength to kick down the ladder, thus narrowly escaping. The man quickly went to the hotel lobby to ask what was going on, but at this moment, the hotel staff was struggling to hold off the thugs outside and kindly reminded the man to go back to his room and not go out. However, as the man ran up to the second floor, the thugs had already broken the door and rushed in. Immediately after, gunshots rang out. The thugs started killing indiscriminately in the lobby. Seeing this, the man quickly ran into the elevator. Hearing gunshots and screams outside, the man panicked and continuously pressed the button for the 8th floor where he was staying, but the elevator didn't move. At this moment, the man was so scared he almost wet himself. He then remembered that he had to use his room card to start the elevator. When the elevator door closed, the man calmed down a little. Back in the room, his wife had already changed into her swimsuit, planning to take their 2 daughters swimming. The man quickly pulled his wife to the window and recounted everything he had just experienced, but while talking, the man realized that his eldest daughter was not in the room. At this moment, his younger daughter told her mother that her older sister had gone to the swimming pool by herself first. Hearing this, the man panicked. After telling his wife to lock the door carefully, he immediately ran to the swimming pool on the 4th floor, but little did he know, the thugs had already made their way up there and were breaking into every room. Helpless, the man had to turn back and go down using another fire escape, but as soon as he reached the 4th floor, he heard the sounds of the thugs from the direction of the swimming pool. Thinking that his eldest daughter was very likely in trouble, the man's heart ached. He quickly passed through the hotel kitchen and finally made his way to the swimming pool. Fortunately, his eldest daughter had remained under the water, so the thugs hadn't noticed her. But just as the man was about to pull his eldest daughter out of the water, a thug coincidentally saw the scene. The man quickly took a swim float to block the door, then held his eldest daughter and ran away. However, the thugs outside quickly smashed the glass door. At this moment, the man had run to the emergency exit, and the thugs were still chasing closely behind. Unexpectedly, another thug appeared in front. Fortunately, a kind person came to their rescue and told the man to run up to the rooftop. At the same time, the wife heard noise outside the room door. After telling her younger daughter to hide in the bathroom, she gently approached the door to check. Little did she know, through the peephole, she witnessed the thugs killing the guest in the room opposite, and the next room was hers. The woman was paralyzed with fear. In despair, the room doorknob started to turn violently. She didn't dare to make a sound, only knew to use her whole body to block the door. At this moment, the woman felt utterly hopeless. Unexpectedly, her daughter came out of the bathroom. Fortunately, after hitting the door a few times, the thugs made no further movement. However, to be safe, she still pushed the sofa to firmly block the door. Fortunately, immediately after, she heard her husband's voice. So, the woman opened the room door. The husband immediately expressed his intention to run up to the rooftop, but was immediately rejected by his wife. The wife believed that since the thugs had just been there, staying in the room was the safest. But in the end, she couldn't change her husband's mind and had to lead the whole family out of the room. But while escaping, the younger daughter, having dropped her toy, continuously screamed, wanting to pick it up. As a result, she was immediately heard by the thugs. Fortunately, the thugs didn't shoot straight, so the man was lucky to escape. Quickly, they ran to the emergency exit, passing through every room, finally reaching the rooftop. But little did they know, the rooftop door was locked tight. The person inside loudly forbade opening the door. Fortunately, the man said he was American, and the person inside opened the door. After the man's whole family came up, these people quickly used sticks to block the door, but could these simple wooden planks withstand the pursuit of the thugs? However, seeing many survivors gathered here, the man's tense nerves gradually relaxed, but soon, the man heard the thugs protesting below the hotel and also learned from other survivors that the prime minister had been assassinated last night. Currently, the country was in a state of anarchy. That was why the riots occurred. As for why the thugs specifically hated Americans, it was because the American forces intervened too deeply in this country. They controlled the local vital projects such as the water plant and power plant to exploit the people and amass wealth. They even wanted to completely enslave the people and to protect their homeland from becoming a toy or a dog of the Americans. These thugs killed Americans to express their dissatisfaction. And this man was the newly assigned water plant engineer. Right after everything was clarified, a helicopter flew in from a distance. At this moment, the survivors all raised their hands and cheered, thinking they had been rescued. However, as soon as the helicopter turned around, everyone was instantly in despair. The survivors fell one after another. The man hit his wife and children in the blind spot, but immediately after, the helicopter began circling the building and conducted a new round of shooting. Seeing that their position was discovered, fortunately at this moment, the tail rotor of the helicopter got caught in the power lines, causing it to lose control. Immediately, the billboard fell to the ground. The helicopter also plunged towards the man. Fortunately, a pillar blocked it, so the man's entire family survived. But just after surviving the horror, the thugs rushed up again. At this moment, the man's whole family had nowhere left to run. Therefore, to survive, the man bravely came up with a bold idea to have his wife jump to the adjacent building. But seeing the distance and height, the woman was terrified. "Listen to me, we have no other choice. If not, everyone will die here. I beg you, jump over there. At least there's a chance to survive." "What should I do?" "You jump first, then I will throw the children over, and I will follow." "Okay." For the sake of the children, finally, the woman had to take the risk and try. However, just as she jumped up, the woman hesitated and almost fell down. At this moment, the thugs had killed the remaining survivors and began pushing the billboard blocking their way towards the man. And at this moment, the woman also gathered all her courage and jumped across. Fortunately, she made it across with only minor scratches. Next, the man picked up his younger daughter, coaxed the little girl to close her eyes, then, while the little girl wasn't paying attention, he threw her over. Fortunately, the wife used her body as a cushion, and the little girl was not injured. The thugs had removed all the billboards. Fortunately, a few other survivors distracted the thugs. The man then had a little more time to escape. At this moment, the man signaled his eldest daughter to jump over, but little did he know, the girl was afraid and ran away. "You have to jump over, or those people will hurt you. You can do it." Just as she was thrown over, the eldest daughter clung tightly to her father's neck, causing both of them to almost fall down. Seeing his daughter hanging precariously in midair, the wife was stunned with fear. Fortunately, a kind person helped, and they were able to pull the eldest daughter up. Hearing gunshots not far away, the man quickly took off his belt and tied it around his eldest daughter, then threw the girl over one more time. Quickly, the man also jumped over successfully, but the kind person who had just helped them was not so lucky. At this moment, the thugs also spotted the man. Fortunately, they didn't chase him. However, they took out a poster. On the poster was a picture of the man when he was working at the water plant. It seemed the man had been identified by them. Next, the man followed the pillar down. After confirming that there were no thugs inside, he felt safe enough for his wife and children to climb down. After that, they hid in the office building and began comforting and encouraging each other, but less than 10 minutes later, there was a noise from downstairs. The man quickly went to the window to check the situation. He discovered that the thugs had not only brought a tank, but also aimed its cannon at the building. The man was terrified and quickly led his family to flee, but just a few steps into their run, the building was bombarded by the tank. The wall collapsed immediately. The man's entire family was instantly thrown to the ground by the shockwave. Seeing people running in panic, the man quickly hid his wife and children under the rubble, then he pulled a door over to block the entrance to the rubble. Soon, the thugs rushed in. Seeing the people outside being brutally massacred, the woman anxiously covered her daughter's eyes. A moment later, the people outside were all killed. At this moment, a thug walked up to the rubble. The man thought he was about to be exposed. Fortunately, after poking at the door blocking the rubble, he left the scene. However, to ensure safety, the man didn't rush out. Even when he needed to urinate, he did it in his pants pocket. They waited until dawn before daring to crawl out of the rubble. They divided the work. The man was in charge of searching the clothes of the dead to disguise himself as a local to seek help at the embassy. The woman was in charge of finding a map. But as they were looking at the location of the embassy, a strange noise suddenly echoed in the office. It turned out that a thug was stealing things. He also coincidentally saw the man's family. Before the man could stop him, he loudly called his companions. In this critical moment, the man had to rush in to subdue the thug and cover his mouth. After the thug nodded and agreed not to scream, the man felt relieved and let go. He was shocked to find that this cunning person continued to scream. Helpless, the man had to subdue the thug once more, picked up an object, and sent him on his way. Immediately after, the man finished changing his disguise, went downstairs, used the keys he had found on the thug to start a motorcycle, and quickly rode his family to the embassy. Along the way, dead bodies littered the street. Many buildings were destroyed. Fortunately, because they were wearing local clothes, they were not detected, but when they were just one street away from the embassy, a crowd of thugs appeared in front, marching. The man froze in place. He understood that he couldn't turn back now, or he would be immediately discovered by the thugs. Therefore, he could only bow his head as low as possible and risk going forward. Fortunately, these thugs didn't recognize them, but unfortunately, the motorcycle was hit by the thugs. The man had to get off the bike to pick it up. At this moment, a thug also lent a hand to help. But as soon as they lifted the bike, the two people looked straight at each other. The thug immediately recognized the man. The man felt a chill run down his spine. Just when he thought everything was over, fortunately, out of compassion for the children, the thug didn't expose them. The man's whole family escaped. Quickly, they reached the embassy gate, but the embassy was completely surrounded. Inside, it was eerily quiet. Therefore, to ensure safety, the man sneaked in first by himself. He saw bodies littered on the ground. It seemed the embassy had also been attacked by the thugs. The man intended to go inside the building to check, but just as he approached, a crowd of thugs came out. The man didn't have time to hide, and was immediately spotted by the thugs. Next, the embassy was bombed. The man quickly ran out, then led his wife and children to flee through the alleys, but facing the thugs who were familiar with the terrain, running around aimlessly like this was not the solution. Therefore, the man had to break down the door of a temple. After a period of pleading, he finally got a place to hide. However, after searching outside with no results, the thugs quickly guessed that everyone was in the temple. The monk tried to stop them but was immediately pushed down to the ground. At this moment, a thug placed his gun next to the wall, while the other thugs went to search other places in the temple. The man tried to secretly steal the gun, but little did he know, he stepped on a dry branch. The sound immediately alerted the nearby thug. Seeing that the man was about to be discovered, the wife on the other side actively stepped out. Seeing his wife captured, the man also had to take a risk. He picked up a stone and threw it towards the thug in front of him, then snatched the gun from his hand. But when he pulled the trigger, he realized that the gun had no bullets. Just like that, the man was also subdued by the thugs. Immediately after, the leader of the thugs tore the woman's shirt, intending to assault her in front of the man. The man could only scream in despair. Fortunately, at this moment, an American elderly man was escorted out. "I can get guns, lots of guns, all kinds of guns you like." While the thugs were distracted, the elderly man and his accomplice quickly coordinated. They immediately shot down all the thugs present. Then, the elderly man brought the man's family to the rooftop of an abandoned building. After a day and a night of running, they could finally rest a little and replenish their energy. Immediately after, the elderly man pointed to the river not far away, telling the man that if he followed the river for a few kilometers, he could reach Vietnamese territory. By then, the thugs wouldn't dare to chase them anymore, and they would be completely safe. To the man's thanks, the elderly man replied that it was his job and confessed that he was a CIA agent. Currently, this place was one of their strongholds. They came here to protect talents like the man. And after careful investigation, it's not hard to see that the US was indeed secretly deploying forces in Thailand. Their influence was infiltrating every sector. However, the initial claim that they wanted to enslave the people of this country was not fabricated by the thugs. It was clearly the US's intention to manipulate politics. However, the local people had risen up in resistance. Was their action truly thuggery? But this riot truly was beyond the US's expectation, because in their arrogant perception, these local people still seemed ignorant. After that, the man's entire family felt safe enough to fall asleep. But when the man opened his eyes again, he saw the elderly man leaning down to check something. Just as the man was about to ask, unexpected gunshots rang out from a distance. The man quickly hugged his children and hid behind the wall. At this moment, the elderly man also saw the thug's position. So, he simultaneously drew fire and let his accomplice take the man's family to flee. But as soon as they reached the stairs, the elderly man's accomplice was shot dead. At this moment, the thugs aimed their guns at the man's family again. Fortunately, the elderly man managed to shoot him down in time, but at the same time, he was also shot in the abdomen. However, the elderly man still managed to stand up and take down the second thug. After that, the elderly man staggered out into the street, knowing that he couldn't survive and not wanting to implicate the man's family. He decided to feign death and lay down on the ground. After the man's family had run far away, he mustered all his strength to crawl up and eliminate the thugs who were chasing the man's family by car. Quickly, the man brought his wife and children to the riverbank. Seeing two thugs approaching them, the man had to pick up stones from the ground, preparing to wait for the opportunity to act. Fortunately, the two thugs were so preoccupied with talking that they didn't notice them. Immediately after, the man hid his wife and children under a house and went to the riverbank alone to find a boat. But the noise quickly attracted the boat owner's attention. The man begged the boatman not to shout and simultaneously took out his gold watch to trade for the boat. But little did he know, the boatman didn't know the value of the watch and instead liked the man's shoes. Just as the two were making the deal, the thugs suddenly arrived. In this critical moment, the boatman had to hide the man in the boat, but the man's shoes revealed everything. So, the man was quickly pulled out. The man tried to resist, but how could he fight against a crowd? Immediately after, the man was forced to kneel down on the ground. But just as the thug was about to pull the trigger, the eldest daughter, hiding in the shadows, couldn't bear it anymore. She bravely ran out. The thugs were also distracted by this. The bullet hit the man's shoulder. Immediately after, the thugs grabbed the eldest daughter, put the gun in her hand, and forced her to shoot her father dead. But how could the eldest daughter pull the trigger? Seeing that the eldest daughter wouldn't listen, the thug aimed the gun at her head again. This scene completely crushed the man. Therefore, to protect his eldest daughter's life, he began to constantly comfort her and told her to bravely pull the trigger. But how could the eldest daughter kill her father to survive? Seeing that the thug was about to harm his eldest daughter, the woman suddenly rushed forward from behind and hit him with a stick. The man quickly snatched the gun from his eldest daughter's hand and, with two quick shots, sent the two thugs on their way. After the woman vented all her anger on the thug, the whole family quickly got into the small boat and paddled desperately towards the Vietnamese border. But as they were about to reach Vietnamese territory, the thugs chased after them. The Vietnamese military ahead also spotted them. Hearing a gunshot, the Vietnamese military simultaneously aimed their guns at the man's family. Because the man's family didn't have a permit, the Vietnamese side could only force them to turn back. The man raised his hands high. Seeing the thugs gathering behind him, he had to take a risk, ignoring the military's warning, and continued to move forward. Fortunately, as soon as they entered Vietnamese territory, the military immediately stopped the thugs from shooting, then aimed their guns at them, declaring that the man's family had reached Vietnamese waters. If the thugs dared to shoot, they would consider it an act of war. Hearing this, the thugs had to give up the chase. Finally, a little about this movie. The thugs claimed that it was all the Americans' fault, so why did the thugs helicopter on the hotel rooftop shoot indiscriminately, killing even local service people? One must know that the resentment of the people usually accumulates silently, but once it erupts, the destructive power is immense, directly proportional to the degree of suppressed resentment. Although the protagonist's family ultimately survived among the corpses, to continue living, they had to find a hiding place. That was also the only survival rule of this movie. However, what made no escape terrifying was that even after enduring countless difficulties to reach the US Embassy, that place had also fallen. The country was in a state of anarchy. The airport and railways were all paralyzed. Now, the only safe haven was also gone. That was truly no place to escape. The despair of the protagonist's family made the viewers sweat profusely. Even horror movies don't have this effect. And the things that made people panic in the movie were even more numerous. For example, the scene where the thugs brought a tank to bombard the office building. The building shook violently. The people had no power to resist against that powerful firepower. Or the scene where the protagonist's family secretly paddled a boat towards Vietnam. Gradually, the border appeared before their eyes. That was the line between life and death. But the thugs suddenly chased them from behind. The Vietnamese military commanded them to turn back with guns. Life and death were only a breath away. What is the line between life and death? I think the national border is one of them. However, after the protagonist's family crossed the border, the Vietnamese military immediately turned their guns, making people feel relieved. After running for so long, the feeling of being protected was wonderful. The value of a movie lies in its reputation, and the value of a movie review lies in the feeling of the story. Today's story ends here. Thank you all for watching the movie. What do you think of this movie? Please comment below.